Hey, mine's and jellyfish. Welcome back to Knives, I guess, and how you doing today? I hope you're doing good. Hope you're having a good day. But do me a favor and hit that like button or the terrorists win. And on our last live stream, we went in on Menards, the Guidesman fracture. Now let's take a look at what we're holding, because it'll bother you if I don't. And you know I love you. So first things first, and most importantly, the pocket clip is tip up, which is the Lord's carry. We have got black G10 right here. We got a flipper tab. Let's flick the bean. And we got right about maybe a hair over 3 inches of D2 steel. And I say that with a question mark just because of the funk we got with the performance on this thing. So this is one where I carried it. It did okay enough. It was all right. This thing is like $22 at Menards. Menards. Sorry, this is the last video I'm doing with this thing, so I got to get them in there. But since I have never set foot in a Menards, I had to order this online. So it was like 22 bucks. So 22 bucks for D2 and a folding knife, not terrible. But yeah, we did our live stream, and let's go take a look at how the factory edge did real quick. We're going to go out to the car hole and look at the first pile of cardboard. Here you go. And welcome back to the car hole. So this tiny pile is from the factory edge on the Guidesman fracture. Oh man, yeah, it didn't do great. Alright, so that was a very small pile of cardboard. It was a very small pile. The factory edge didn't really put up with a whole lot. We didn't get a whole lot done with it before we had to stop and sharpen it. We're going to go out to the car hole again, and we're going to take a look at the pile that we got after we did the 17 degrees per side edge bevel on the Work Sharp Precision Adjust. So here you go. And wouldn't you know it, we're back in the car hole. So here's the pile we got off of the 17 degree per side edge that we put on there. It's a little more than double the pile from the factory edge, but still, this is a very small pile. We only filled 1, 2, 3 of these boxes up, which we'll talk about that when we get back to the tabletop. Okay, so you see that pile. That first pile was tiny. That first pile was tiny. That was no great shakes. That reminded me of 3CR13 with how it performed. It didn't do good. That kind of scared me a little bit because, of course, I've talked about it ad nauseum, but we've gotten a lot of D2 with bad heat treatments on it, absolute donkeys that performed like crap, and that had me a little bit worried. But, of course, that second pile is about 2.5 times bigger than the first pile, and that one took a couple hours to knock out, which was interesting to say the least. That means either well, let's go over the timeline of events first, and then we'll get into the rest of this. So, of course, I got everything written down, and when we started with a 222 on the electronic edge tester. Now, that is an okay-ish edge. It's not great, but it's okay-ish. That's part of what gave me a little bit of pause, because once, the ones with the bad heat treatments, we started off in the 270s to 300s, and we tried to go, and we couldn't get more than about 30 minutes before the edges completely gave out. Maybe a little bit longer, but not much. So the 222, it inspired a little bit of confidence, but not a ton, and then we went for an hour, and we hit a 567 in the worst spot that I could test. That is approaching 600. That's approaching devastated edge territory. And you got to sharpen it after that. Now, I will show you the electronic edge sharpness tester later, but we'll get into that in a minute. So we sharpened her. We put her at 17 degrees per side like we do with D2. It really likes that 17 degree per side edge bevel. And we went ahead and went back in on it. And we started at a 140 on the sharpness tester, right there in line with what I get when I sharpen pretty good D2 on a consistent basis. We get it to 120 to 140. So it was right there in the butter zone. The high end of the butter zone, but right there. You know, I was happy with that. But we went for an hour and we hit a 486 in the center. Now, that was the worst spot I could find, and D2, normally it'll be like the mid to high 200s after that first hour. We went for another hour. At the 2-hour mark, we hit a 497 in the worst spot that we could find. And yeah, it didn't do so hot there. But then we came in and we went for another hour, and we hit a 576 in the worst spot I could find in the center. We went 17 more minutes, and the edge was toast. We found a 616 right in here. And again, that 600 is completely devastated edge territory. So we got 1, 2, 3 hours, give or take. No, so we got 1 hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours. No, 2.5 hours. Sorry. The way I wrote this down is not necessarily how I normally write it down, but we broke it up over 2 sessions. So there's our first hour when we went from 140 to 486. We went for 30 more minutes. We hit 497. The next hour we hit 465 and 576. So that's 2.5 hours. So 2 hours and 47 minutes before we got to that 616. Okay, now that that's cleared up, 2 hours and 47 minutes. That is more in line with 8CR13 performance. That's not in line with D2 performance. Normally D2, we generate a lot more cardboard, and we get about 5 hours of that kind of cutting out of D2 with the 17 degrees per side edge bevel that we normally do. So it's one of two things has happened. Either it's on the softer HRC side, but the heat treatment is in line with that HRC, like it wasn't completely unheat treated, but it was heat treated to a really low HRC, or we got something like 8CR13 that is marketed as D2. I'd believe either one at this point without doing a metallurgical test. I don't know, but you know, that was a little bit disappointing. And you guys saw, like, if you've seen some of these videos, the pile of cardboard we've gotten off of some good steel is gigantic. Huge pile of cardboard, and we got like 6-7 hours of cutting time out of it. You know, and the cutting time is not the end-all be-all. We've used it as a metric because, you know, a consistent cutting rate and consistent cardboard gives you a pretty consistent result. You know, D2 will pretty much always do 4 hours like clockwork. 8CR13 will do 2.5 hours. 3CR13 will do about 45 minutes before you sharpen it. So this, if it's D2 with a good heat treatment and a good HRC, should have done, after sharpening, another 2 hours, give or take. Like, we should have gotten about 5 hours out of this edge on this steel with a good heat treatment and good HRC. 56 HRC, that did about 4 hours after I sharpened it. I think it did about 4 hours after I sharpened it, maybe a little bit more. It's been a while since we've done that lower HRC at around 56. So, you know, some of that information, what this does is it casts doubt on the type of steel that we have. It's either the type of steel we have or the heat treatment that let this thing down. Now, for $22, you could do a lot worse for a beater knife. I will say one thing that I found that drove me nuts is the pivot. Might be able to hear that. There's lock rock and there's side-to-side blade play now. The pivot would not stop loosening up. If this was worth a little bit more to me and I cared a little bit more, I'd put some blue thread locker on there and set it back down, because once you tighten the pivot back up, there's no blade play. But the pivot kept loosening up, and it got a lot looser than this, and I kept tightening it back up about every 30 minutes or so, because it would not stop, the pivot pin would not stop backing out. So that was worth noting. It was infuriating, but what do you do? Now, the ergonomics on this wound up being quite good. Both of those sessions, I didn't start feeling any major discomfort. The only thing that I felt was the pressure right here from holding this like this and push cutting and having the knife rock back. Because this thing has got a hollow grind into the flat, and it's a fairly short hollow grind on some, about average blade stock, it did provide a lot of resistance on the cut, which put some strain on my wrist, which it always does. Not a big deal. But, you know, the extra pressure on that cut definitely pushed this thing back into my finger here pretty hard. That was the only problem I felt. You know, the callus that I've got right here has gotten a little soft from missing a couple of weeks. That wasn't a problem. There wasn't any hot spotting through here. The ergonomics, they did a good job on that. Ergos are pretty damn good. You know, and that's the biggest takeaway from this. This thing will hold an edge for a little while. It's good for an absolute beater that you loan somebody else. And the ergonomics were quite good for the kind of testing that we did. But, you know, don't market something as D2, or at least let us know the HRC is going to be on the low side. At the very least, it took a good edge, which implies there is some heat treatment there. And it held on to it for a while. Now, again, it performed like 8CR13. It's right there with the 8CR13 performance. But at least it had that going for it. The bad heat treatments we've had on the D2, again, they wouldn't even do more than about a half hour off of a good sharpening. And when I tried to sharpen them, I couldn't get down below the 270s, 280s. So this thing took a good edge. I can't really argue with that. It's just the D2 on it kind of disappointed me. So, that's what happened. I love sharing with you what happened during these Cardboard Slayer live streams. That's what happened with this one. D2 was disappointing, but what do you do about it? And again, when I say we cut till a devastated edge, that's what we're stopping at. Like, that's what those cuts are looking like when we finally say, all right, the edge is cooked. This one I kind of didn't care enough about to really bring out a whole other piece of cardboard. I just got out the one that we ended on the factory edge because with the new edge sharpened on there, we pushed till we got a bunch of worse cuts, but those cuts were intermittent. Now, I did figure something out. We are learning as we go. When you go into push, if you start where the edge is a little bit better and you push through, it'll cut okay, and then it'll intermittently kind of roll the cardboard a little bit. But if you start where the worst spot is and you push through that, everything is going to wad up and roll around that, and you're not going to cut. You're going to tear about halfway, and then the cardboard's going to fold up. But we will get out the electronic edge sharpness tester just to kind of show you. That 616 was in one spot. That 616 took us a few tries to find it, because I think it was on our third or fourth try we hit that 616. So we're going to see, we should see high 500s. I'm going to test in about the same area that we tested and got to 616. But I didn't bother, I don't care about this thing enough to bother sharpening it at this point. I wanted to be done with that live stream. I wanted to be done with this knife. So we just wrapped it up and got on with life. Let's see if we can find the bad spot. .637. So that's what I'm talking about. That right there is an absolutely devastated edge, and it'll get devastated in one small spot in the area, and one small spot. And the area around it will be a little bit sharper, just sharp enough to keep pushing through those cuts. But once you hit that, you know it. Once you hit that, you've got problems. As a matter of fact, here's the sample from the second edge, the sharpened edge. And you can see right here where it tore the cardboard and rolled it up. And it tore the cardboard and rolled it up. And I had worse cuts than that show up intermittently when I caught the bad spot just right. But they were becoming more... Oh, my Hops number 9 gun oil fell over. But, we had more and more of those cuts showing up, and finally the edge let go. We tested it. We hit that 600, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're testing till we hit the 600s, or the cardboard just won't handle cutting anymore. Sorry I forgot to add all that, but I'm tired, and this is my third video of the day. But, yeah, like I said, you guys know I love sharing with you what happened during the Cardboard Slayer live streams. That's what happened with this thing. All in, I'm not that impressed. And it's, again, if I was in an environment where guys were like, hey, can I borrow your knife? This is what I'd hand them. I'm not giving them one of my good knives, but this thing, I don't care what happens to it. I didn't even bother sharpening it afterwards. It's going in the graveyard, and I'm going to forget about it. And the one guy that was asking me to do this is going to be real excited. And at least it was sharpenable and held an edge for longer than a half hour. That's the best I can say about it. Good ergos, and the edge lasted longer than half an hour. But I can't think of anything else to say about this before I'm just padding out the runtime and holding you hostage. So all that being said, thanks for looking at my crap. Subscribers, you guys are awesome. Y'all keep coming in. I appreciate you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We got our live streams, regular activities. There's plenty of live streams and regular videos. There's plenty of activities. Words are hard. It's somehow your fault. Man, I'm tired. But comments, I love some feedback. Let me know what you think about this thing or anything else. And of course, I got my Amazon shop linked off. You don't have to use it, but it's the best way I've got to show you cool stuff that I've found in the last couple of months. And all that being said, y'all have a nice day.